Hi, my name is Noah and welcome to Architecture in Sci-Fi Film. Today I want to talk about the recent Star Trek movies. The future is usually the first thing that comes to mind when science fiction is mentioned. We think of breakthroughs in technology and the future society developed for better or for worse from the paradigms of today. Most of the time this future is portrayed in such a way that it makes a statement about present-day issues regarding society, environment, politics, or to question progress in various fields of science. The Star Trek universe is known for its optimistic vision of the 23rd century, a future where most of today's problems are no more. This utopic Earth has overcome poverty, various diseases, pollution, famine and war. All the nations are united under one flag, and Earth is a founding member of the United Federation of Planets. But the TV shows were focused on space exploration, this final frontier, rather than showing us Earth and its cities, so we only have a few glimpses of the Starfleet Academy. Also, the shows had relatively small budgets, so that didn't help. Building cities is quite expensive. But all this changed with the reboot of the franchise in 2009. Not only do we see more of San Francisco, but the last two movies featured cities and buildings with a lot of details. There's a visual extravaganza I've all been waiting for. So my working question is, how does the future utopic city look like? Are there some relevant lessons in design we can extract from this? Star Trek is known to be more science-oriented, so for architecture to be a useful tool in storytelling, the cities of the 23rd century must not only look cool and futuristic, but they have to be feasible, and above all, they must reflect the society. So how did they achieve that? Now, the three movies I want to talk about, Star Trek from 2009, Star Trek Into Darkness and Star Trek Beyond, featured several locations, a couple from Earth and a few alien ones. My focus is on the human cities of San Francisco, London and Yorktown. Albeit the last one is technically a space station, it actually functions as a city, where most of the population looks humanoid, so it works for the point I'm trying to make. The premise is that society has followed a somewhat linear path of technological development without any major setbacks, so it stands to reason that significant landmarks will still be present 250 years into the future. First, San Francisco. Here is the Starfleet headquarters and academy. We had different iterations of these buildings throughout the series, and they were always presented with the Golden Gate Bridge in the background. This is also the case now in these movies. Another familiar landmark is the Trans-America Pyramid, now dwarfed by newer buildings, thus offering us a sense of scale. The entrance of Starfleet Academy is actually the central building of California State University campus in Northridge, LA. The rest of the Starfleet Academy catches our eye by being the large horizontal building in the scene, in contrast with the rest of the structures, mostly skyscrapers. So my first observation is the design doesn't have to be extravagant. A futuristic look can be achieved by scale and density alone. Most of the city is too foggy to see any further details other than silhouettes. The first time I saw this, due to the grey palette used, my mind immediately associated this to pollution, an atmosphere full of smoke, because I'm so used to seeing these bleak, pessimistic renderings. Thus the scene seems strange to me, especially considering the bright optimistic tone of the future which Star Trek is known for. So on a second thought I assumed this must be fog, but I have to say the heavily desaturated colors were not an inspired choice. What is also noteworthy here is that there is vegetation in the foreground, not abundant and barely distinguishable due to the lack of color, but it is there. In the second movie, Star Trek Into Darkness, a blue filter was used to convey the time of the story and give us the futuristic feeling. Blue is usually the go-to color for the positive technological world of the future. Personally, I found it a bit too much and quite heavy. I would have preferred more whites or a lighter tone, but it is way better than the previous one. Due to the fact that a good portion of the story takes place on Earth, and probably a larger budget was allocated to creating these cities, we can now revel in all its splendor. We get the Starfleet HQ towers designed to resemble the Academy from the previous movie, and also to be a somewhat natural extension of the real building that served as filming location. That is the Getty Center in LA by architect Richard Meyer. The rest of the city is a beautiful composition, with a lot of towers, each with its unique style, but complementing each other. We see parametric design with different patterns, various meshes and lattices, complex curves, organic design, and some sharp angles and jagged edges, all mixed together. This eclectic blend also features some present-day buildings, the ferry building in the port of San Francisco and the landmark lighthouse on Alcatraz Island, both with some additions to give them the futuristic look needed for the story. The infrastructure is also interesting here, with bridges and suspended highways that connect buildings at different levels, gates for flying machines, and also what seems to be solar panels inserted in the streets. Vegetation is everywhere, not abundant, but ever present, both on the street level and also integrated in the buildings. The second city is London. Similar to San Francisco, new buildings with a lot of different styles and shapes are thrown in a mix with existing older ones. The major difference is the height. Although London has its high-rise, the buildings are not as tall as their counterparts from San Francisco, and also they feel more organically distributed. This is a particularity of all European cities, where the streets don't follow a strict grid. Present landmarks that are included here are St. Paul's Cathedral and the London Eye. While we don't get to spend too much time in the city, we are given a glimpse into a future that pretty much reflects present-day real estate development. Low-rise buildings are more frequent in London, Baroque and Gothic heritage is preserved and valued. This can also be seen at the hospital outside the city, a Tudor-style building with a contemporary addition in the background. London also feels more style-oriented, while San Francisco seemed more technical. So my second observation in these future cities was the sheer variety of styles employed. Considering that present-day architecture has similar stylistic manifestations, it stands to reason that diversity will play a major role in the future. The social context in Star Trek, where Earth is a unified nation that still preserves specificity and cultural differences are embraced, translates well into this vision of London and San Francisco. Current issues like the preservation of heritage buildings, sustainability, cultural identity, and integrating vegetation to improve the living space have clearly influenced the design of these two cities. They seem like a natural extension of the present, cities inhabited for centuries with a rich history behind them, but also renewed, alive and fresh. Thirdly, we are introduced to Yorktown. This is something different, a space station presented as Starfleet's most advanced base. The design of the station itself is another discussion that I will reserve for a later video. Today I will focus on its buildings and urban layout. Being a city created all at once, its buildings resemble one another, but all are different. No design is used twice, their heights are alternated and occasionally clustered. What struck me the first time I saw it was the lightness of the overall structure, while the buildings are quite heavy looking. There is no parametric design, no organic or other variations that we saw in the previous movies. There is no architectural experimentation here, and it makes sense to be more conventional when building an entire city all at once. But what seems like a recipe for a boring city is well compensated in urban design. A lot of vegetation is distributed all over. The central spines have large bodies of water inserted between buildings and suspended bridges span across them. There is no street grid, we don't see any cars, but there are small teleportation devices. Thus, the ground level is clearly pedestrian oriented. The actual buildings are inspired from present-day corporate headquarters and financial hubs like Frankfurt or Toronto. Also, various famous buildings can be spotted here and there, like this Burj Al Arab replica at the very core of this snow globe in space. So my third observation is that natural elements like vegetation or water play a vital role in creating a compelling utopic future city, especially when the architecture is quite tamed. The lessons to be learned from these three situations is when designing a city in the future, a city that did not appear overnight, mixing styles is the way to go. Small particularities can be added to distinguish various locations and also allow for strange experiments every now and then. Every city has them. This gives the feeling of something that developed over time, which changed through generations and passed the test of time. Even when the city is brand new, while following a similar style, the buildings have variations in shape and size, thus enriching the experience and sending a message that this world has a history behind. and those cumulated experiences are synthesized in providing a different look for each building while maintaining an overall uniform look. Also, in a universe like Star Trek, which aims at accuracy and believability, architecture is not wildly extravagant. The designs, although creative, are tamed, following a known logic and extrapolating from current tendencies. Thank you for watching and hope you enjoyed it. If you want to support this channel, you can do so on Patreon, link is in the description below. And if you have any suggestions of movies you want me to analyze, please leave a comment and maybe subscribe.